Hey everybody, I am here with my son Tim again, and we are going to do another game review. Today we're going to be talking about Krosmaster Arena. Now, as many of you know, one of my favorite things to do is to paint gaming miniatures. And yet somehow I keep finding myself attracted to games that require no paint. And that is true of Krosmaster Arena here, absolutely. I picked it up primarily because, well, it's a freaking cute game. You just can't, beat the little chibi guys. And Tim had already picked up Super Dungeon Explorer some time ago, and I thought I could sort of add to our collection by doing Krosmaster Arena. So Krosmaster Arena, unlike Super Dungeon Explorer, is really just a straight-up brawl between two groups of these super cute figures, and they're from another game, right? Like an online game?
Yes, there's a couple of different computer games actually, internet games called Wok Fu.
Wok Fu.
Wok Fu.
Interesting.
Don't know much else about it.
So anyway, the idea is that each player is going to build a team of up to 12. I think it's levels. 12 levels of characters. Now, all the guys in the basic box are level 3. I think that's correct. Yes, it says so right on the cards. And so you can bring as many, I think there's as many figures as you want, as long as you don't exceed that level cap. Every character has its own stats, its own abilities, little spells, and different things that it can do. I mean, it's what you would come to expect from a standard tactics game. Then you put them on the board and you go and you duke it out. But there's actually a little bit more to it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, the game itself is, although it's got a very simple rule set, it has a lot of strategy to it that goes beyond actual combat. And that is where the victory system comes into play, where the goal is not to eliminate your opponent, it's to remove all of their gallons of glory.
Or GG. And what's interesting about that is obviously the way that you get rid of them primarily is by kicking your opponent's butt. Every time you take out one of his characters, he loses a number of GG equal to that character's level. So that brings forward one of the decisions that you need to make when you are building your team. If you put a whole lot of levels into one character and that character dies, that's a big stack of GG that you're going to lose right away. So that's one consideration. So what else we got going on in here?
The other thing that we have happening, aside from all of the very cutesy terrain, are these little coins called commas, which you can collect throughout the game. And these commas, when you collect enough of them, could either be used to purchase power-ups at various spaces on the board. Alternatively, you can use the commas to steal GG from your opponent.
I actually thought you were just purchasing it.
No, you are straight up stealing a GG
Really?
from your opponent.
Wow, okay, so that was one thing that I got wrong in the rules. But then again, we hadn't actually used that ability yet. Had I known that you were stealing it from the other players, I probably would have thought more about doing it. The other thing that you do with this game is that it has a picture dice, and at the beginning of every turn, you actually roll 2 dice, and that is called the tension roll. And when you make the tension roll, depending on what symbols come up, you'll actually have some choices as far as special power-ups that you can give to up to 2 of your characters. If you get doubles on that roll, then each player actually loses a GG, which means that it acts as a kind of a timer to the game, albeit a random one. What I discovered while I was playing the game was that the power-ups that you could purchase during the game is really what made the game interesting. So while you might spend a lot of time building your force in a particular way so that you could maximize the strengths and weaknesses of each of the characters, the power-ups that became available during the game could really, really alter play. I just said really twice. That's funny because I told him not to say really a bunch earlier, so that's on me. Oh, you know, one of the things I wanted to mention before we, go too much farther into the game, although really, there's not too much more to go into the game. Really? Shut up! The rules. So this is the rule book for the game. What's nice about it is that it gets you playing right away. So you have your standard, here's what all the stuff looks like, and here's what it is. And then you read a page of rules, and then you set the board or the rule book down on the table. You grab a couple of figures and terrain bits, and you play out what you've learned so far. Now, this is nothing new. I mean, the first time I was introduced to program play like this was Squad Leader, and that was a game from the late 70s.
And for me, it was Earth Reborn, which is a more recent game.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. And then as you go through, as you go through a scenario, you are presented with some more rules, another scenario, and by the time you get to the end, you're very familiar with everything that has come before, which I find is a fantastic way to learn this game. In fact, what's really interesting is because it slowly introduces you to the rules, I find that this could be a very, very good game for kind of stealthily getting somebody into what is otherwise a fairly hardcore strategy game.
That's very true. Something I do have to mention about the programmed rules is that it doesn't explain. None of the tutorials explain the full game. That comes when you get to the later section of the rulebook and you actually sit down with the real board and play a full game. And so it was a very neat way to learn the game, but a few tutorials in, I personally started getting a little bored with it. And on top of that, because the entire point of the tutorials is to just eliminate your opponent, it lacked the tactics that comes with actually playing the full game, and so I kind of needed to play a full game of it before I actually became fully interested in it.
No, and I agree. I would have to agree with that to a certain point because, for example, the first scenario, I think we played 4 turns and said, okay, no, we get the point, and then we moved to the next scenario. But I think I was more engaged with the tutorials than you were. As I played through them. In fact, Fitz, who was the other guy that I was playing with, he also felt like he was having a good time with the tutorials. But no, it's totally true. And there was another problem. In many of the scenarios, you're using 1 or 2 figures, and in some cases, the pairings were in no way balanced. And so you'd get the impression that all the characters, or some of the characters anyway, were broken when they aren't necessarily, but in those situations they certainly were. So overall, though, I would say that I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the game. There's a certain amount of resource management as you're picking up the comma, so that you can afford to purchase the power-ups. And I forgot to mention during that the tension roll, if you don't use the dice to take those boosts, you actually get comma instead. But once I got into the game and was playing several games of it, I felt like there was a lot of depth here. It was a lot more detailed than I expected it to be, especially giving the sort of cutesy look of the whole thing. What about you?
I actually, there is a lot of, on top of the resource management, the tactics is actually very in-depth. The rules themselves are very simple, but once you get onto this big board and you know what all the different pieces do, the number of options that you have with each of your characters, how you build your force, and how you run your force makes for a very in-depth game that belies its very cutesy and simple nature.
That's true. And I love all the pieces. I know that, I think that there was some actual like sculpted terrain that you got, I think maybe in the Kickstarter.
I think in the Kickstarter, yeah.
But I don't feel like I'm missing anything. If anything, I'm not thrilled with the crates because they tend to fall apart, as this one has already done. But if you're really concerned about that, a few drops of glue would certainly solve that problem. But one of the nice things about the way these are built is that you can take them apart and everything puts away sort of perfectly into the box. But that's not the case if you start gluing things together. I don't know. I think it's a winner. I really like it. I know that we're going to play it some more, and I'm looking forward to it. What about you?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to get in a few more games of this so that I can figure out exactly how to crush my opponents and make them cry. No. So that I could learn more about the game is really what I want to say.
Well, and the other thing that I found interesting is you'll discover that there are a ton of figures available for it. But really at no point during playing the game did I feel like I needed to buy those in order to make the game fun. I did feel like I needed to buy them because they're really cool looking, but that's an entirely different problem.
No, some of the expansion models look really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, to getting more of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that about covers it. Certainly, if you have any questions, leave them below, and I regularly answer all of the questions. Most of the questions, almost all of the questions that people post on the videos. So if you have questions, you can ask. Feel free. And I think that's going to do it. Did you have anything else?
No, that's just about it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and I will talk to you later.
Bye-bye.